may not work. I'm going to give it a try anyway. And the concept is, if go into our windshield wiper examples, cover stuff, if you're having a tough time seeing which trunk rotators would be needed for the pelvic girdle rotation, you know, that's okay. It's not easy to see. So what I did is I came up with this little thingy. I didn't make it, but I just said this might work. Maybe I should go check, see it out. So check this out. The concept is when this band pulls, right? Pulling, but it's not just pulling my leg in the direction of flexion, it's trying to pull my arm back to the band, right? So globally, the band is trying to make my leg rotate counterclockwise and my arm rotate clockwise. Does that make sense? No? If I pull on the band, my leg wants to go this way. Yes? And my arm wants to go this way. Yes? Okay. So my point is that if you can see it in the sagittal plane, let's try to take a look at it in the transverse plane. In other words, the band is trying to bring my leg this way, and it's also trying to bring my arm this way. Okay? So now let's look at it in terms of the trunk rotators. Okay? The band is trying to rotate my pelvis to the right. You see that? But it's also trying to twist my trunk to the left. No? Better? Okay, once again, the band is trying to spin my pelvis to the right transverse pelvic girdle rotation. But because it's trying to spin my pelvis to the right, it's also trying to spin my trunk to the left. And because I look at the muscles from the perspective of the trunk, I'm using my left transverse trunk rotators to lower it down, to bring it up. And then when I come on this side, I'm going to need the other rotators to lower it down and raise it up. Let's pick up. God damn it. That was actually all part of my plan to wake you up. Okay? Let's take a look at when we cross over on this side. The same muscles that are trying to pull my pelvis to the left are trying to pull my trunk to the right. You see that? The same rubber band, guys, the same red band. It's Friday, I have a red band. The same band that's trying to pull my pelvis to bring my legs up is also trying to pull my trunk across this way. Pull the pelvis to the left, pull the trunk to the right. That's about as straightforward as I can make it, guys. Okay? And no, I can't do it a few more times. I'm whooped, man. It's awesome, but you can do it. A couple more examples I thought about that could be potentially interesting on the test. If I'm standing here, let's see, this will really challenge your motion, muscle, analytics. I stand here and I do this. Now, this is an example we had in class when dealing with motion. And I'm going to ask you to answer which group of muscles and through which type of contraction work sped up that motion. In other words, I'm not interested in what slowed it down. All I'm interested in is what actually got me moving. What actually created the motion. What sped me up when I did this. What actually got me going. Okay? You have time to think, to discuss, or to move. You stand up. No one's forcing you to sit down. You can stand up and do it and see if you can figure it out. I'm asking for group and I'm asking for work. And then I narrowed it down to just speeding you up. I'm not worried about the slowdown part. What made you move? What got you going? Ready? Go.
Pretty sure it's your right hand turn or
What leg?
right hip.
Right.
Because if it was an external rotator, or because your external rotators is what's going to be slowing it down. Because if you want to slow it down, you would literally just do it 360. You see what I'm saying?
But can your hip twist?
Do the deck. Do the deck.
Can your muscles
Do the deck.
like your all the twisting your
But you know what's cool? When everybody's freaking out, I'm like,
Your pelvic
it's just normal motion. It's just accentuated. And that's cool. Like, I can tell you exactly.
It almost feels like it's your trunk that's driving you.
or your trunk
That might be a good test question.
You still have to kind of flex your abs through that. Why should be
Did anybody else see when they filmed it, went kind of viral with Dak Prescott doing his little back spin? And everybody else is like, what in the world is he doing? But all of us are like, internal rotation, external rotation, left transverse, right. That's because his trunk had to rotate to keep his upper extremity in position. So like, you were like, left transverse, left rotation.
I was very the same way. You saw the 49ers dude was doing
Awesome.
Did you see that dude from last night, man?
And then they photoshopped him dancing with Shakira.
We were volunteers last
It was
night.
great.
Hey, good people.
Decked them, dude. Volunteer for what?
All right, guys. I'm gonna just give you the answer, and then you can follow up with, I understand, I don't understand. The answer is right hip external rotators through concentric work. Okay? Now, if we wanted to talk about slowing this down, that's kind of a trickier kind of conversation because my internal rotators will eventually start to get real tight as I move in the direction of external rotation. If my foot doesn't hit the ground, then eventually my internal rotators are going to slow me down. But as soon as my foot touches the ground, the friction itself, the ground will slow down my motion. So I didn't want to get into the semantics of that. So I was like, well, let's just talk about what's up. What actually made me spin? What actually created the left transverse pelvic girdle rotation? In this case, it wasn't my trunk muscles. That goes to the question we had a couple classes ago, why we don't necessarily just say pelvic girdle rotators, because in this case, it was my right hip external rotators. And in the case of the windshield wipers, it was trunk muscles. In other words, the pelvic girdle rotation won't be from the same muscles every time. Unlike like when you work at your elbow, it's going to be either your flexors or your extensors every time. When you move in your ankle, it's going to be your dorsal flexors, your plantar flexors. But from the pelvis's perspective, like I said, it's a basketball. And that basketball has to spin because of hands. And the hands below are our hips, and the hands above us is our trunk. So it's either the trunk or the hips that spun the basketball. In this case, it was my right hip, my left hip didn't do anything. Any follow-up questions about why that was right hip external rotators through concentric work? Okay, we're good? Okay. All right, how about this one? This doozy. It's not really a doozy. Oh, Kelly Clarkson. Okay? So, obvious motion, guys. I don't want you to be like, I saw something trembling. Yeah. But if I rotate to pick up the band and come back up, not talking about my arm kind of stays like a plumb bob. Nothing about arm. I'm talking about lower extremity, right? Pelvis, hips, legs. So, who, what, when, where, how? What's working above resting tone and how bring me down to pick up the TheraMed? And then who's working, why and how to bring me back up after I get the therapy? Again, no upper extremity stuff. I mean, we can talk about who needs to be working asymmetrically to create rigid links, but those rigid links aren't going to get me down to go get the band and bring me back up to get the band. That's specifically what I'm asking. The motion, who is responsible and how for the motion of me going down and then coming back up. Okay, ready? Break. We may not get to stretching today.
It's the like hip flexors for sure going down like concentric.
Extensions going back up.
Wouldn't it be the right hip flexor still
Wait, hang on.
concentric?
Alright, so when you squat, when you go up, you're definitely using your back here. So it's just, I would imagine it's the same thing as you extend.
What was it for the curl though?
Wait, no, for like a Romanian deadlift, dude, like when you do that, you are definitely using the back of your leg,
Yeah, but
for sure.
But you're using other muscles too. See what I'm saying? Like it's not just specific muscles in one area.
Yeah. But mainly you're using the back here. Whenever you're going back up.
Because like on the curl, when you come up, it's the elbow flexors, like concentrically down, elbow flexors. Because I remember having a question about flexors.
Extensors going up. And flexors.
Who amongst you is taking
Flexors
Myers
now
in the spring?
letting gravity.
So you're talking
Huh?
about the knees and the legs.
Looking forward to that? Yeah, all right, let's,
Pretty sure it's the flexors applications. It's just they're doing concentric.
So what are the flexors? Oh, the flexors.
Or the hip flexors.
And the hip extensors. And the hip extensors are like, just like that.
Well, yeah, since we don't exactly have the same muscularity, I'm just guessing the hip flexors would be something that pulls on.
I was just thinking it's your quad and your hand. But all I know is, dude, when you do a Romanian deadlift, and your leg is locked like that, and your body's forward, dude. It hurts like a bitch. That should be like lower back. Because I can tell you what, that is straight up using your lower back to go up. What, lower back? Deadlifts use everything. Answer all of the above.
Well, that's
What?
Sorry, I can't multitask, so I'm gonna try to do the best I can
Okay,
with these
give
very
me a while.
expensive props that we can only afford here. This is gonna be a leg, specifically which leg? My right, okay? So the left leg, we know as I pivot is going to go along for the ride. So I'm just gonna give it from the perspective of the right leg, okay? Does that make sense? I don't have three hands. This is gonna pivot. This is gonna go along for the ride. Everybody understand that? Okay. So when I go from here to there, what type of pelvic girdle rotation did I have? Anterior pelvic girdle rotation, because of what motion at my right hip? Right hip flexion. Now, if you think of this as a teeter-totter, I have more stuff on the anterior than the posterior. Even though my other leg, my left leg, is kind of serving as a counterbalance, I got more stuff in the front than on the back. And there's a cool function of levers. You don't have to need to know the test. I'm going to teach you this in biomechanics. But levers with muscles can change the direction of an applied force. In other words, I pull on the back and the front comes up. Or another way to look at it is because I have more stuff in the forward, if I relaxed all my hip muscles, wouldn't I tip over, right? And create more flexion? Gravity is trying to flex me. My left leg kind of helps minimize that effect so that my muscles can actually battle against it. But if I relaxed everything, I'm tucking and rolling, Grandma. So because gravity wants to flex me, I need to activate my extensors to let the flexion happen with eccentrics, change my direction through a plyometric sequence, and bring me back up through concentric. So my right hip extensors allowed the flexion, slowed down the flexion, changed my direction, sped up the extension, then at the top they let off. So the plyometric sequence of those right hip extensors are at the bottom part, right? When it was eccentric followed by concentric, and that changed the direction when I went from going down and coming back up. Okay. Yes, sir.
When we first started, I hit flexors, concentric.
Yeah, it really depends. We need some more data on that. What I mean by that is, I don't need my flexors to start tilting my head forward because I have more stuff in the front. So it's kind of one of those things where if for people, me, I got a little bit more stuff in the front than you, right? So on the test, it's about the majority of the motion. There's not, remember how I said I'm not going to be like, you missed it because 0.001% of that time you needed a little tip over. It's going to be, look, what happened there, what happened up, and that front, even if you needed a little tip over, insignificant. It's there, but it's not significant to what I'm trying to get you to see. But it's a great observation, great question. I probably don't need a little tip over because I already have some more stuff in the front. Okay. Yes, sir.
Can you explain the motion of the pelvic girdle when you use your right knee flexors?
Yeah. Right hip extensors. If I use my flexors, I'd be like doing like a front flip. So I'm going to do my best. Help me see if this makes sense. My right hip extensors. Think of it as if you go in the weight room and there's like a tricep push down, right? Where there's a cable redirecting force. You pull down on the cable, and what happens to the weights? It goes up because there's a pulley there. It redirects your force. You push down, it goes up. Very similar. Your hip extensors, hamstrings, gluteus maximus, semimembranosus, tendinosus, biceps, long head, because a short head doesn't cross the hip. It's a whole mouthful. So what we just say the hip extensors, right? The muscles that pull in the direction of hip extension, whoever they may be. Those muscles are going to be letting, tricep push down, you let the cable go up, and so you let the weight stack go down, right? It's the same concept. You let it go up so that the other end of the cable, the weight stack, is allowed to go down. And then you make the handle go down so the weight stack comes up.
So why in that particular case would you be using your extensors if you're using flexion and not slowing down?
Why would be using your extensors? Because they would be doing a job preventing you from crashing into the ground and breaking your face on the ground. Because if they turned off, I would fall.
So basically, or
What's a both of them?
your right hip flexors. and-
No, you don't need your flexors. You already have gravity wanting to smash your face into.
Oh.
And this is the best part of my job. And this is the best part of my job because this is not easy stuff. This is not easy stuff. So we have to kind of use context clues, and we have to do thought experiments where, well, why do I need a certain group of muscles to do a job? Oh yeah, because gravity is trying to flex them. If I use the flexors again, I'd be trying to like do that real fast. So dude, awesome. And you're gonna have it for the rest of your life. Good stuff. And there's other people that are thinking that, but they're living it. So I'm glad you did. You probably helped 10 people in here because you asked that question. Anybody else? Because bro, my hamstrings are starting. Okay. Don't overthink this. It's the exact same concept, but instead of going sagittal, we're going to go frontal. Okay. So let's pretend I have a bucket, and it's one of those buckets where the handle stays up. Okay. So in other words, I don't have to, I can't go as far this way as I can this way. But the same concept, this is gonna represent the bucket handle. And so just pretend I don't have my hand on it, and I do this, and then I grab it, and then I come back up. Bless you. Does everybody understand what just happened? I did this, grabbed the bucket, and then I came back up with it. One more time. This, got it. Away. Come back up. Okay, give that some thought. It's actually a very similar question, just in a different dimension.
I think. Yeah, it's the adductors. It's not going to be adductors now. Because they're letting gravity win. And then as they come back up, then that becomes yeah. The plyometric sequence will happen at the end of
So, right, so you have to have a pause. Well, I mean, like, technically there's a pause. Because there's like a, you know,
I think that's,
I guess it's like
that's what the
technically-
isometric sequence is. It's at that point.
I guess it's like acts like specifying what the isometric takes care of the alchemy.
What do you
Just remember, what would you put like all the way?
plyometric sequence?
I know, but like, whenever you get to a certain point, like,
I think the definition but at the end.
I know it's like equal. I know it's like equal to go for. But like for the test, what do you think? Like identifying a case or
You can ask him.
it seems like this is not going to be like a picture test like last time. Like it's going to be straight up.
I'm sure. I actually think it's probably looking at pictures too. I think it's going to be equal this test because
I guess to like show you the motion.
yeah,
But the questions are definitely a lot different.
I think it's going to be a lot different. You just need to know if something's holding this way. That's how I think it.
Wait, will you break it?
Like, will you break yourself? So, like, for instance, if there's abductors working, how would you break yourself?
Right. So, how I'm going to clarify this question, yes, I'd like to start. I'm going to clarify this question for the test is, which group of muscles and what type of work would be responsible for a majority of the motion going down, right? I mean, it's such a great nuanced question. Like, yeah, I understand what's letting me go down, but what initially got me going? I would need something. In this case, I don't have more stuff over my right leg than my left. So in this example, yeah, I would need to kind of pull me across just to tip the scale until the other agonist is like, okay, now I got you, now I got you, now I got you. So I would phrase it where to say, look, I don't care about that small little, the majority of the motion down, the majority of the motion of what's going to be working a majority of the time. Right hip adductors are going to be working majority of the time to allow the right lateral pelvic rotation, or in the case of the hips perspective, to allow the abduction. And then through concentric work, it's going to create the adduction of the left lateral pelvic. Right hip adductors, the inside muscles. Watch, it's no different. Check this out. Let's see if I can do this. Probably can't. I'm getting old. This is the same concept as that. Same concept. And if I kept going around, I'd switch the muscle groups. But I is not that talented. But you know what? My birthday's coming up. Yeah, it's my birthday. Guess how old I'm gonna be? 21? I wish.
55.
In dog years. 55? You son of a gun. I think my wife actually knows my official age, because I don't keep track of that kind of stuff. 43.
Oh man.
Back in my day. Absolutely. I started teaching. Thank you, God, I understand. I started teaching my first class in this room when I was 29 years old. And I was terrified. They were going to learn this. Sweet. So for my birthday, what can y'all get me? Cough drops. I love cough drops. Okay, any questions about why that would be your right hip adductors? Yep. AD. You good? You want another example? Are we doing well? Is this helping? Okay, we'll push stretching to Monday. Let's do another example while we're on a roll. Let's see what we got here. Are those new TVs, guys, or are they the same TVs? They look bigger. Is that just me? They're the same? But the lights are different though, right? We can actually see what this room looks like now. It's fascinating.
Is that new TV? I don't know. That's a good question. They look different. I think they're all. I saw a lot of boxes in here yesterday. They definitely are. Look at the bezel on the side. They're like almost non-existent. I wonder what they did with the old TVs and if I can have. You see?
Hey, you want to know something really cool about Usain Bolt? He has never, ever defeated me in a race. It's true. Head to head. Yeah. That dude can run faster than me on his hands. That's a fact. All right, I'm going to ask a different kind of question. Notice I didn't say I'm going to ask a different, concept or similar concepts, but just a different type of question for us to analyze. I think at the end of the day, the misconception that I'm tricky, I'm just trying to assess whether you understand these concepts in different ways, okay? Notice there was never a time where I'm like, here's a handout where the 10 stages of this or the 10 processes of that you have to learn and memorize. So we have to learn some terms, but for the most part, it's conceptual. So here's my question. Let's analyze motion and muscles of his right shoulder. I'm not disrespecting that there's other things happening. I'm just respecting that that's our question for right now, right? We analyze motion and muscles joint by joint. So if we wanted to, we could go to other parts of the body. But for this question, right shoulder. So obviously when he's sprinting, there's going to be a fluctuation of shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, shoulder flexion, shoulder extension. And the faster he can make that frequency happen, the faster he's going to travel down the track. That he's got some freakishly long legs, stride length, man. He's like 6'3". That's the future of sprinters. In about 50 years, all sprinters are 6'3", 6'4". Remember when Randy Moss came out? Everybody was like, he's too tall. Like took 3 strides, and he was like 30 yards down the field. So now there's a lot of tall receivers. So the question is, where would the plyometric sequence be for his shoulder extensors? And on the test, I might say, would his arm be in front of his body or would his arm be in the back of his body? Like, I may make it that simple. But you, understanding the concepts, need to be able to deduce, figure out, thought experiment. I'm giving you plyometric sequence, and then I'm giving you the group, the shoulder extensors. And then I'm asking you very specifically, would his arm be in the back of him or would his arm be in the front of him? Don't answer it right now. Give it some thought, discuss with your friend. Won't you be my neighbor? Hello, neighbor.
Or in the front or the back? It looks like it's in the back.
I think the plan starts when there's like showing extenders start down past that.
Oh yeah, then we're extending it.
See, that's what we as teachers, we forget, like we ourselves, like we think like our classes are the only ones that matter.
After this example, can we get like a level 10 question?
I'll try, let me try. I'll try to.
Hopefully it's not easy.
I woke up feeling
Alright, so I was requested after we do this one, that I try to come up with like a level 10, alpha level red question. Okay, so I'll do my best. Alright guys, shoulder extensors, plyometric sequence, is his arm in the back or is his arm in front? Okay, that means I have two teams, I have team front and I have team back. Do you trust me? Do you trust me? Some of you are right and some of you are wrong. Okay, I'm going to do something that I learned in Auburn.
And because if I say, who says back, I won't be wrong, who says front? So, no, if you don't follow my rules, I will call you out and I will make fun of you in front of everybody. Okay? Just trust me. This is my way of trying to see what people think without you guys being embarrassed about letting me know what you think. Okay? For 10 seconds, just everybody close your eyes so that I can pull the class with you not having to worry about putting you in it. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. You too, sir. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. If you think it's back, put your hand up in the air real quick. Okay, hands down. Keep your eyes closed. If you think it's front, put your hands up. Okay, down. Okay, heads up, 7 up. Y'all never played that game? I dominated that game. Cheated. Okay, the answer is arm is going to be in the front. Team front. And this is why, because when he's flexing, what's going to slow down that flexion? And then what's going to speed up the extension? Now you could say, well wait, why not gravity slow down? Gravity can help, but gravity is very limited. Guys, gravity from planet Earth is a very weak force. Newborn babies beat gravity when they're born with their arms and hands. So if you're going to slow it down at the rate you need, gravity needs help. Okay? And remember, your flexors can't push you to a stop. So because these guys can't push you to a stop, you have no choice but to pull with the other muscles in the other direction. To slow down your flexion through eccentric work, change your direction, and speed up your extension through concentric work. Eccentric, concentric, change of direction, bang, 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 plyometric sequence of the extensors. Yes, sir.
When you talk about the idea of a plyometric sequence, is it only talking about one muscle group? So like,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
extensors, or is it
Absolutely.
just my flexors?
Well, your flexors are going to have their plyometric sequence there.
So you can have several depending on which muscle you can.
Every muscle group can have a plyometric sequence. It's just a sequence of work. Well, it's a very specific sequence of work.
So for this one, it would be.
Well, no, but I told you it was going to be the extensors. Yeah, that's how I set it up. So you asking me, is it going to be extensors? In my sarcastic mind, I'm like, I told you it was going to be extensors.
In this scenario right here, is gravity ever going to win? Or is the muscle
Gravity is going to help.
So no,
Yeah, but it's gonna help. It's gonna help here when you go to speed up, and it's gonna help here when you go to slow down. But again, if I just let gravity speed me up and slow me down, and I have to go faster than that. So it's not that gravity can't help, it's limited in its help. So your muscles gotta be like gravity, I love you, but we gotta pick up the pace, we gotta go faster than that. Gravity is a very weak force. And now, it's persistent as a movement. You know what I mean? It's persistent, but it's very weak. You know, for all of the mass of this planet, it only influences this band like that. So sometimes gravity is great, but sometimes we gotta help it out. We gotta go faster. And when I say go faster, slow it down in less time and speed it up in less time. Any other follow-up questions with that one? Was that a good, different type of question for you guys, right? I give you a functional task, and then I say, hey, let's analyze this group of muscles, and then you tell me where their plyometric sequences are. I missed the first part.
On the other side of it,
Uh-huh. The flexors
where would the plyometric
of the flexors,
of the flexors?
right there. Slowing down the extension and then speeding up the flexion.
So it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. It's the same concept. It's the antagonistic concept that's opposite in different ranges of motion. Absolutely. Yeah. So I just want to clarify what opposite meant. Opposite ranges in the motion. Absolutely.
So like for the extensive, when you of the shoulder, you apply metric sequence in the front, and this.
When you're flexed. Yeah. When you're flexed.
When you're flexed, but.
There you're going to be when you're extended.
Your flexor plyometric sequence.
Is going to be when you're extended, yeah. And that kind of makes sense because when you're extended, that's actually when you're going to be lengthening and stretching the flexus. It kind of makes sense, right? And when I'm flexed, that's when I'm going to be lengthening or stretching at the extended time.
For this case, would the plyometric sequence like be based off of your starting position or
Ooh, what a great question. It wouldn't matter. I'm going to say it wouldn't matter because whatever your starting position, your first initial motion is going to be through concentric work, and we have to wait until you have slow down first, followed by speed. So, you know, let's say his first movement is right shoulder flexion. Well, he's going to be using his right shoulder flexors through concentric. The first plyometric sequence is going to be through his extensors, right? Slowing down the flexion and then speeding up the extension. But once he gets moving, it's just going to be a cycle of these guys, now 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 these guys. And it's just going to be a cycle. And that should make sense. It's so ridiculous. Please don't post any of that stuff, guys. All right, what stays in here stays in here. What's fascinating is that for my athletic trainers and a few feature therapists and people interested in injuries, if you have to alternate phone calls, flexors, it's you, extensors, it's you, flexors, it's you, and you're tired and exhausted, miscommunication's happening, it should make sense that, oh God, the switchboard operator just forgets to turn something off or forgets to call, and I'm talking fractions of a second, when a certain muscle should have turned on and they didn't, or a certain muscle should have turned off and they didn't. And that's when strains, pulls, ruptures, it's a neural miscommunication. Someone should have done a job and they didn't, and that's when people get hurt. It's like that in the workforce too. All of these physiological examples can be applied to the workforce. Someone got hurt, why? Because someone maybe didn't do a job they were supposed to. Someone got sloppy, someone made a mistake. And it's the same thing, man. When you're doing these frequency things on and off, on and off, on and off, and you're fluctuating between this group, that group, this group, that group, all it takes is just one oops. That's pretty cool. Right? I could do the DAC. That could be a level 10. Do the DAC. All right, let's see, level 10.
The Cowboys losing their captain.
I would think for this test, I really don't know if I can come up with one that's more difficult to see than the pelvic girdle rotation from the joint muscles. So that being said, maybe we can, I got one. Okay, so we'll use the rest of class time to analyze this one. Okay? Sorry guys, when the wife texts, you text her back. Good Lord, did I misspell that word? Okay, football players, maybe some other athletes might be used to this kind of drill. So it's gonna be fun. What do you think? This is just meant to be an open-ended conversation. All right? Are you ready? Why does my fingers do this?
Is this the Dak Prescott
Okay?
station?
All right? Whew. Man. What do y'all think?
All of the above.
Give it some thought. One more time. Good Lord. All right. I'll do it.
And well, you got the thing going.
Anybody need to practice with pulses and heart rates, man?
So that's just like video.
Guys, let's analyze the transverse plane stuff, okay? Transverse plane motion. So don't get too in depth in those or look at any kind of small lateral stuff. Let's do the obvious. The obvious was the transverse.
I'm having trouble explaining.
So it's just like a seatbelt. You don't think they're fired? He can only beat Charlie Hughes.
Yeah, but what?
At least he's been to the Super Bowl, and the Cowboys hasn't been there in like 20 years.
I think that's what I'm talking about. Whether it's how this
They need to fire their head coach first. Then we'll talk about it. Then we'll talk about Dak Prescott.
All right, I'm going to clarify something.
know where they're going.
I'm going to clarify something.
Texas.
Although I
They got
taught
this
you
down.
guys about hip muscles, right, when my feet are on the ground, trunk motions when my upper extremity is ground, what we didn't talk about is what if nothing's on the ground, okay? So there is going to be some initial spin that's going to be provided by the hips. I mean, in other words, when I'm doing this and I go to jump up, I'm going to just give a little bit of twist to kind of get it going, all right? But let's not even look at the hips. Let's just talk about what's going to be happening in the trunk. Because now I have two scenarios. I have nothing's connected when I'm up in the air, my lower extremity, nothing's connected in my upper extremity. So when that happens, there's going to be an illusionary effect taking place. When there's nothing to anchor, here's a good example. When there's nothing to anchor, what I mean by that is hold on to the band. So like let's say this is anchored, this is moving, right? But when there's nothing when there's nothing anchored, both ends are gonna move together. But there's an illusion that takes place When I'm off the ground and I have trunk and pelvic girdle motion, it looks like this stays still, which it does. But what's happening is that when motion is being caused or continued, really, because again, my hips are gonna kind of get it going, the other end is actually moving at the same time, canceling out that motion to keep me kind of in the same position. So in other words, I'm still having trunk motion, but because my angular momentum of my whole body is going this way, as my trunk rotates, this stays in the same position. That's the illusionary effect, okay? So let's infer I'm off the ground, nothing is anchored. I started my left transverse kind of when I was here to jump up. I'm gonna kind of get it going. But the motion or the muscles at my trunk that kept me looking forward, that's my question. Was it my left transverse trunk rotators or my right transverse trunk rotators? Well, we gotta make sure I know which pelvic girdle rotator because I did both, right? So let's say the first one I did this. Right transverse trunk rotator. And then the next one when I did this. Left transverse trunk. If I didn't use those transverse rotators to keep me in the same position or to help with the continuation of the spin, I'd do something like this. Make sense?
How do you know what kind of work you're doing between?
Oh, what a great question. What a great question. Because the reason I know is because one, I'm doing a job, right? So I identify a certain group of muscles. I don't have any chalk in here. And then I know the motion. So the motion would be from my trunk's perspective when I did this right transverse trunk rotation. And I use my right transverse trunk rotators to continue the spin of my left transverse pelvic girdle rotation. That had to be through concentric work. Now, what slowed me down? Well, if I reach the end of my range of motion before my feet hit the ground, it's gonna be the stretching of the left transverse trunk rotators. Or if my feet hit the ground, then it's literally gonna be friction from the ground that's gonna give it some stuff, okay? A couple things. I would never, in the history of the universe, ask that question. It was just someone asked and I was like, I can't think of anything else, so let's have some fun with it. I think the hardest question that I'm going to ask you on the test will deal with pelvic girdle rotation with external forces that we can see.